Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here with another episode of Bitcoin Tech Talk. I know I didn't do one last week. I kind of regret not doing that. Yeah, I'm busy, have other things to do, and sometimes I just don't have the time. Anyway, I do want to make this more a regular feature on this channel and, reward those that are subscribed and so on. So this is what we are going to do today, which is, you know what? I should probably be in the main screen here. Yeah, so we're going to go over, the newsletter, and I'm going to try something new. I'm going to go through some of my tweets and try to explain some of them if people are confused or whatnot. Anyway, hopefully that's the plan for today, and we'll get through it. I don't know how long the show will take. Obviously, it's a lot shorter than say a show that I when I have shows with tone and so on. So a little different. Hopefully, I can get this more towards the audience that want to see this stuff. So anyway, that's what I am working on. That's what we're going to do. Let's take a look at some of the stories that I published this morning with Bitcoin Tech Talk. Anyway, issue number 158. I can't believe I've done that many of those. And this is from October 14th, 2019, which is today. And we are going to talk about a few things. But before I do all of that, there's a couple of books that I want you to know about. First is Programming Bitcoin: Learn How to Program Bitcoin from Scratch. This is my book from O'Reilly. And of course, the other book, which is the Little Bitcoin book. And this is available from Amazon, and it's got 30. Wow, there's 31 ratings now, and almost all of them are. Yeah, I'm gonna click helpful for all of these, but yeah, I mean, it's 31 reviews. I think we have one 4-star, the rest are 5-star. Anyway, great book for people that want to understand it a little better. And of course, there's Programming Blockchain in November. And basically it's going to be in San Francisco. I want you to know that there's a scholarship available due to, OKCoin's generosity. I have 6 scholarships available for November 5th and 6th. You're still responsible for your own travel. But other than that, I will teach you everything, right? Like, I'll give you a copy of my book and all the other stuff, and the cheat sheet and everything else that I usually give. And this is something that OKCoin was generous enough to donate. So I want to make sure that the people that are benefiting can really contribute to the system. Anyway, I only have like 9 applicants right now. Not like if there aren't enough, then it'll roll over to the next one or something like that. But it's something that if you are interested and have always wanted to learn but couldn't afford the class, well, this is the time to do it. All right, so now that I've showed some of my stuff, let's take a look at some of these stories. All right, you know what? I'm gonna mute this random guy that's pumping hide user on this channel. All right, that's pumping XRP or whatever. Okay, all right, here we go. Let's take a look at the first story. This is a Bitcoin transaction monitor, and it is really well done. And you can see here that it's fee rate, sats per virtual byte, and everything else. And you could kind of see, like, you can roll over anything and kind of get a bunch of different data about these dots, which are essentially transactions entering the mempool and so on, and what happened and so on. You can filter it by all sorts of stuff. So we can filter by SegWit spending. These are all the SegWit transactions and so on. You can look for either one. Replaced by fee. These are all the replaced by fee transactions. You would think that they would start very low and then just kind of get replaced higher, but that's not what seems to be happening. So they're in there, and if they don't get in, then they keep going up and so on. You can look for nested pay to witness script hash and see how well they do, or how much of that is out there. Yeah, I guess that's pay to multi-sig. Yeah, pay to script hash, pay to pub key hash, which one's being spent and so on. Yeah, BIP 69 compliant. That's interesting. BIP 69 is the transaction ordering BIP. That lets you know, like, they're done. The inputs and outputs are ordered, I think ASCII-betically or something like that, to hide which ones change and which ones actually spending and so on. But lots of really great info, and the visualization's great. There's a fact here that you can you can read about, but I mean, it's wonderful to just sort of visualize where the fees are currently, and I'm sure it'll be much more useful during the next bull run. So take a look at that. All right, this is a transcript. Everything is broken. This is a transcript from the Crypto Economic System forum, and this is by Corey Fields. Now, if you guys don't know Corey, you guys really need to know more about him because he's one of the top developers on Bitcoin, at least by commit and lines and all sorts of other stuff. And he just does his work, and he gives presentations once in a while. A lot of people don't know who he is just because he's not out there like sort of promoting himself, and he doesn't have a Medium blog or a Twitter account or anything like that. But he is he knows what he's talking about because he's contributed a lot to Bitcoin, and this is worth reading about all of the different bugs that might exist, and what's broken and how you fix it, and all of that stuff. So I would encourage you to go read this, and I'm not sure if the actual talk is online or not, but if it is, that would be also useful. Another talk from the same conference was from Ethan Heilman, and these are the near misses. These are great. It gives you an idea of all of the ways in which Bitcoin sort of overcame some of these problems that happened. So CV 2010, so that happened in 2010. CV 2010, another inflation bug. 2012 net split. 2018, that's the more recent one. And it gives you kind of a sobering reminder of how important security is and how hard it is. By any measure, these are some really smart people that are working on all of this, and this is despite all of that, there's some bugs that get through, and there's a lot here that we can learn from. So great talk as well. Would encourage you to take a look at it. All right, so here's another one from the same one, Quest for Threshold Schnorr Signatures. And this is from Tim Ruffing, who's on the research team at Blockstream. And if you don't know what threshold signatures and what Schnorr signatures are, well, Schnorr signatures are a much easier to compute and less CPU intensive kind of signature. And it was available when Satoshi created Bitcoin, but it was unfortunately under patent. So people have speculated that perhaps Satoshi didn't use Schnorr and used ECDSA instead because of the patent that Schnorr was under. But since then, Schnorr patents have expired, and that's something that we're bringing in with probably with Taproot. Threshold signatures, essentially the idea is that you want like M of N, right? Like multi-sig. With ECDSA, you have to have each person giving an entire signature, which takes up more block space. With something like threshold signatures, what they do is they pass some payloads around, and you do several rounds of it. And at the end, you end up with one signature. Now, you can do something like that with N of N. I think the real problem, I think, tends to be K of N or M of N, something like that. And that's like 2 of 3 is very useful, for example. And going in that direction is what this whole talk is about. And very good, like talk. I would encourage you to read this as well. Again, this might be online. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. All right, Bitcoin doesn't look bad. It's a Medium article by Cane Island Alternative Advisors. And this, I usually don't talk necessarily about price except for the stock to flow model. I found this pretty interesting because their thesis is that, okay, at a certain point, there are prices that you never see in Bitcoin again. So for example, like 20 cents on November 4th, 2010, you never saw 20 cents again. Never, ever, ever. Similar with February 2011, 71 cents. You never see that price again. April of 2011, $2.20. Like you never see that after November 19th, 2011. And so on. And there's a lot of sort of price levels where it never kind of goes below. And this is what they're taking a look at, and what it really means as far as adoption and so on. And very interesting stuff. I would encourage you to take a look at this article as well. All right, let's see. Some more stuff. Let's take a look at some Lightning stuff. A payment point feature family. All right, so this is from Nadav Cohen. Basically, it's an idea about having some sort of payment point. So if you make sort of your elliptic curve point known to people, on the Lightning Network, you can do some pretty interesting stuff. And there's some really deep ideas here about discrete log contracts and multi-signature and all of that. It gets a little technical, probably outside the scope of this particular show, but there's a lot of interesting things that can be done, and there's a whole discussion that you can look at with Lightning that's talking about payment points and so on. All right, second Lightning story: increasing fee defaults to 5,000 plus 500 for a healthier network. This is by Rusty Russell, and he's been pushing for more higher fees so that more people are incentivized to join and route and so on, and have more liquidity within the network. It's an interesting thought, and there's some discussion going on it in the Lightning Dev mailing list. And finally, there's a blog post from Casa about security concerns about Casa node. Essentially, there's there were some tweets about what's going on with Casa, how come it's HTTP instead of HTTPS, and so on. There's a default password and so on, and there were people complaining on Twitter about it. Jameson and Brian, I think, do a pretty good job here of sort of putting some of that to bed. If you are running a Casa node, just use it properly. You should be okay. Although, Lightning is still kind of beta, maybe even alpha. So, I mean, you're not supposed to put that much money on it. But I thought they did a good job in addressing some of those concerns. All right, so that does it for the actual newsletter. But I wanted to go into my profile and show you some of these tweets. I think some people get kind of confused at some of my tweets, and I wanted to go over some of them and explain my reasoning behind some of them, and maybe explain it in video form, and some people kind of learn better that way and so on. All right, so let's start with about a week ago, October 6th. Social media addiction, indulging, and vegging out to entertainment is fiat emotional management. Self-reflection, talking things through with trusted friends, and taking walks, powerlifting to think is sound emotional management. Now, This tweet was done like last Sunday, and the reason why I did that one is because I realized like a lot of social media stuff, a lot of the stuff that we do online, it's to manage our emotional state. When you're about to feel sad or bored or something, there's a tendency to go on social media to manage it, and I realized like that's actually very similar to how central banking works. A lot of people go on, a lot of people that, or I guess the central bankers that manage the economy, when the peg to the dollar or some other metric or something like that, when that is sort of out of bounds of where they want it to be, they either buy more securities or sell more securities, or buy more reserves or sell more reserves, as a way to sort of manage the economy, quote unquote. And I realized that that's essentially what we're doing with social media. There's actually a really good video by Louis C.K. Conan empty, like feeling sad, I think. Yeah, embrace your loneliness. I don't know if you guys are going to be.
You need to build an ability to just be yourself and not be doing something. That's what the phones are taking away. Yes. Is the ability to just sit there like this. That's being a person, right? Yes. No one can, you gotta check. Because, underneath everything.
All right, so I'll probably get like copyrighted or whatever. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of a clip of that. But basically, very good video. I would encourage you to watch it, and it gives you an idea of how we're managing our emotions like kind of badly by using social media. The right way to manage emotions is through, like taking walks, thinking things through, and powerlifting sometimes, and so on. All right, this one, centralized coordination gets inefficient after Dunbar's number and gets grossly inefficient at the square of that. This decentralized coordination gets more efficient with more participants as competition increases. It's another tweet about sort of like centralized coordination and so on. The big problem with big organizations is that coordination becomes very, very inefficient. And if you've worked at a large company, you know this is true. Small company, everyone knows everyone. What are you doing? You're not doing anything. It becomes very clear who's not doing their work and who is doing their work. And you can fire them or do whatever, or lay them off, or assign them to something else, whatever, and that gets more efficient over time. In a big company, it's extremely difficult to figure that out, and as a result, what you need is a lot of middle management, a lot of people watching what other people are doing, and it becomes just sort of grossly inefficient. Contrast that to something that's more decentralized, like a city or something like that, and essentially everyone has to act for themselves to go find the work instead of having work assigned to them. And that's a real big difference between decentralized and centralized coordination. Centralized coordination is almost always sort of like, hey, you need to do X, Y, or Z, and these are the rules by which you have to do them, and so on. Decentralized, everyone sort of has their own freedom to do it, and because there's a lot of people trying to do a lot of the same things, often because it's very profitable, you end up with competition, which makes things more efficient. They learn from each other and so on. So that's what that tweet was about. All right. The advantage of the Bitcoin believer is precisely during the downturns, they're willing to look like fools for the short term in order to make money long term. And that's just true, right? Like there's a lot of people that are not buying during the downturns because they kind of get scared. And really, this is about belief. And if you actually believe in Bitcoin, then you're going to go and buy it at no matter what the price. And usually, a lot of them either are already all in or are dollar cost averaging or buying on some sort of consistent basis and so on. And that willingness to look like a fool is that's the secret sauce. That's how you make money as a Bitcoin believer, as opposed to somebody that's just sort of like trading or day trading and so on. The hardest part of preparing steak is letting it rest. So this was a steak that I prepared on my Kamado Joe. And it looks more well done than it is. Actually, it was like medium well because I put the temperature of the searing at like 800 degrees and I only seared for about a minute on both sides. But you get these nice grill marks and so on. Anyway, I found out from this thread that you don't really need to let your steak rest. So that's something that I've been doing and I like it. It tastes great. That feeling when you eat a 40-ounce medium rare steak and you still feel hungry. Yeah, so I kind of still felt hungry. I just sort of fought through it and the next day, ate the one meal a day that I do. Fun short interview I did back in Riga. It's a fun interview. I think it's in my newsletter. Please take a look if you're interested. Someone from 200 years ago would think that we're all centrally controlled via smartphones. They wouldn't be wrong. It's kind of true. A lot of people think that, like they're controlled by their cell phones and sort of the notifications that they get and so on. And they feel like they have to respond right away. Being able to put that down and not letting the cell phone control you instead of you controlling the cell phone, that's a real big life skill that a lot of people need. Anyway, next one. Rich people are good at capturing value. In a fiat system, capturing value has a low correlation to providing value. Rent seeking is easier than providing goods or services. And that's how most rich people get rich. And Bitcoin fixes this. Well, we know that rich people are good at capturing value. Otherwise, they wouldn't be rich. In some way, they have to capture value, whether they do it by creating goods and services or by rent seeking. Now, rent seeking, a lot of people sort of confused in this thread about, hey, what does rent seeking mean? Rent seeking doesn't mean like you're actually getting rent from a house you own or something like that. Rent seeking is taxing a transaction as sort of like a middleman without actually providing any good or service. I think that term comes from like France, where the king would sell some tax collection right to people, and it was called rente or something like that. Anyway, rent seeking becomes very profitable in any sort of endeavor where there's a lot of centralized stuff, and the coordination problem makes that very difficult. So what a lot of rich people end up doing is, instead of going towards goods and services in a fiat system, what they do is they go towards rent seeking. That's why investment bankers are like enormously rich, despite them not really adding anything. They're really just like moving capital around. They're being middlemen for the loans that they're getting from the central bank at some small amount and then lending it to somebody else, or and so on. It ends up not actually providing much value, but they make a lot of money because they're making some small percentage of whatever transaction. Providing goods and services, that's the direction we want people that are talented going in, instead of investment banking. And this is something that I pointed out over and over again, which is that the last 40, 50 years, the best and the smartest people have been going into investment banking instead of, like creating some new goods or services. And contrast that to, the early 1900s, where you had people like Tesla and Edison like creating stuff, and that's how they made their money. And that's where you want rich people to be, or the talented people to be, and you want them to contribute to society instead of detracting from it, which essentially rent seeking is. What percentage of your Bitcoins will you leave your kids? Thought it was interesting that 0-1. Like, a lot of people either don't have kids or don't plan to leave any of their Bitcoins to their kids. Good to know. A lot of people are going to the largest range, 26 to 75, only got 15%, which was interesting to me. All right, negative signals. Gratuitous performance art that clearly costs a lot of money. Portion of proceeds going to charity, especially third world. No ship product, no revenue. Aspirational goals that have little to do with the product. Features that sound too good to be true. These are just sort of signals that I've seen over the years for projects that are not going to deliver anything. And clearly there's a lot of that in our space. dumb money eventually exhausts itself, smart money figures out a way to grow. Remember that there's still a lot of dumb money out there. Yeah. So the thing about dumb money, and there's a lot of dumb money out there, is people that are not informed, right? They're not informed about their investment decisions. They just sort of like invest in whatever without researching or doing their own research or even like looking at it. It's just sort of like let's gamble and see what happens. That tends to exhaust itself. This is why casinos make so much money, is because it's mostly dumb people or dumb money that's in there. I mean, there's a few people that are card sharps and like, you know, that count cards on blackjack, maybe some professional poker players that are making money. But vast majority of people in a casino, it's dumb money, and they don't do research. They're just sort of in it for the entertainment, sort of gambling. That money tends to exhaust itself. Now, the thing is, there's a lot of dumb money out there still. And a lot of that has been going into ICOs and stuff like that. Certainly in 2017, some in 2018, but there's still some out there now. Smart money, on the other hand, figures out a way to make more money, and that's a very good motivator. And those are the people that you want to pay attention to. Now, the question is really, are you dumb money or smart money? Or have you done your research? Do you actually know what's going on, or are you just gambling? And that's the big question that you have to ask yourself, because there's clearly a lot of dumb money still out there. There's a lot of ICOs that are still raising money. I asked the question, what's the weirdest way you've made money? Bonus points if you earn Bitcoin. I think Jameson Lops replied that, there were some people that weren't happy with Bitcoin, and I sold them some of that coin for a real Bitcoin. I thought that was probably the most clever one. All right, so just to be clear on the IRS guidance, actions of a complete stranger without your consent or knowledge can cause you to have a tax liability. Seems like a giant legal attack vector to allow anyone to add tax liabilities ad nauseum. Say I wanted to target a person's Bitcoin address. I can craft a hard fork that only gives a small amount to myself and a much larger amount to that address. If I control an exchange and trade my one unit for $100, that person now has a $100 million income. Now, it turns out that the IRS guidance isn't exactly that clear about what the value of a fork is on the day of and so on, and it's based on like whether or not there's actually a buyer and so on. But it does feel like something is really wrong when somebody else can cause you to have a tax liability, and if you don't act fast enough or something like that, it may very well be that you have to declare that you got these capital gain, or you got ordinary income and then capital loss or something like that. It makes it very, very difficult, and that's basically what I was pointing out in that tweet. Ethereum Joseph making ridiculous claims and not backing it up or apologizing. Color me surprised. Yeah, I mean, apparently Joe Lubin claimed that Ethereum has 200,000 developers. Yeah, and this what kind of led to the next tweet. Reality doesn't reveal itself in aggregate numbers. When you're talking about aggregate numbers, like 200,000 developers, you have no idea what the quality of those developers are, and whether or not they're even developers, or what they do. Like, what do you consider a developer? How do you define it? What are they doing? What have they built? How have they done things? Aggregate numbers like that don't actually mean very much. You could have like a company like I believe it was WhatsApp. They had they only had like 20 employees, and they were worth over $1 billion. There are other ones like GE that has like over 10,000 employees and that are worth very little. It's not about the number of people. Aggregate statistics are actually a terrible measure because they're easy to calculate. You can just count them up, right? But there's an inherent assumption there that they're all equally valid or they even out somehow, and that's never the case. The distribution of like the smart people might be in one thing, dumb people might be in another, and so on, which is why this is a ridiculous statement, and it doesn't really mean much, and it's sort of like a point of bragging from a very Keynesian mindset. Keynesians, by the way, love aggregate numbers, and this is why they focus on stuff like, the actual velocity of money and things like that, which don't actually reveal much. Ever get the feeling that Eth is just trying just a little too hard to be different? Yeah, this is based on the sort of dance that they do, I guess, every year or something like that. Yeah, some people are saying it's generational or something. It just seems kind of ridiculous to me. No other coin does this. They're trying, I guess, to do unicorns and ponies and rainbows or something. Too many people bought tokens they didn't understand to buy services they didn't understand to impress people they don't know. Now, this is a little bit of a take from, I think it was somebody said, people buy stuff they don't need to impress people that they don't they spend money they don't have to buy stuff they don't need to impress people they don't like, something like that. So sort of a take on that. Too many people bought tokens they didn't understand to buy services they don't understand to impress people they don't know. It's basically describing ICOs. The reason why your friends aren't Bitcoiners is because they don't understand money yet. And as was my most popular tweet this week, and it's true. It's because you're like most people that don't understand money aren't going to get why Bitcoin is valuable. Two things everyone needs to improve at anything: coaching and community. This is as true of violin as it is an understanding of money. Now, it's a little bit controversial, I guess. I mean, it didn't really get that much engagement, but let me explain the tweet a little bit. And if I have to explain it, it means my tweet failed. That's why it only has 52 likes or whatever. But essentially, you can get to a certain level on almost anything if you just sort of study it on your own. But at a certain point, in order to get better, you're gonna need some coaching. You're gonna need some community. You're gonna need some competition. You need something like that in order to push you to be your best. And that was the point of the tweet. And this is certainly true of violin. I mean, you can learn violin to a certain level just watching YouTube videos or whatever. But at a certain point, you're going to need some coaching and community in order to get better. And you're just not going to be motivated, and you're not going to know the techniques and all that stuff. And this is something that I've been encouraging people, is to go and find your own community, right? Like go and find something where you're going to learn more about money and why it is that you believe, and so you can make sharper arguments when other people are discussing Bitcoin with you. You can either be resentful against the early adopters, or you can be grateful for the opportunity to be free. The first way leads to altcoining and no coining. The second leads to self-sovereignty. Now, I wrote this because a lot of people are resentful against early adopters. In fact, I could sort of see the vitriol oftentimes on Twitter. Oh, you got in early or whatever. That's one way to sort of view things. And there are people that do that. But that's just kind of gonna have like a bitterness in your heart that's not gonna really go away. And what a lot of those people end up doing is, screw Bitcoin, I'm gonna go to this new altcoin and maybe it will become the Bitcoin, and I can be the early adopter in that one instead of being a late adopter on Bitcoin. Now they obviously are clearly wrong on all those fronts, but the big one is that they think that they're late. This is the thing. You're not late. You're still early, and that's something that people have to know. Brian Armstrong, I think before he started Coinbase, I think it was like 2011 or something like that. He thought he was too late. 2011, he thought he was too late. This is the natural instinct of almost everybody that comes into Bitcoin is, oh man, I must be too late. It's money, and it's a monetary evolution. You're not too late. It's going to take a long time for it to actually fully become a standard and so on. Obviously no coiners just refuse to get in because they think they're making the early adopters rich. And I think this tends to be the case more for like sort of economist types or people that are more into Keynesian, are on the Keynesian part of the spectrum of economic theory or whatever. They think, oh, okay, well, we're making you rich by adopting this, so I'm not going to do anything. Again, you could do that, but like what we've seen over the last 10 years is that adoption tends to grow over time. because it is the hardest money. And that means that, well, you're going to have to submit at some point. It's either now or later. The second leads to self-sovereignty. And the big thing is, if you do get into Bitcoin, you really start to appreciate what self-sovereignty really means. You are in control of your money. And it leads you to asking a lot of other questions. What else can I be in control of that I'm not really in control of right now? Or what do I think I'm in control of that I'm not actually not in control of? And this can lead down the path of self-improvement in a way that maybe you didn't expect. And finally, I think it was, how old are you? I just, I like doing demographic surveys and stuff and so on, which make it fun sort of to, see where people are at. Turns out most people are between 25 and 39. Didn't expect that, but that tends to be the case, I guess, among my audience. Bitcoiners believe that sound money is valuable. Moneroans believe that privacy is valuable. IEO buyers believe their exchange will be profitable for a long time. Heads believe whatever narrative that the Ethereum Central Committee is pushing this month. And this tweet is really all about what the value proposition is. And it's, again, about belief. You hold Bitcoin because you believe something. Now, there were people that believed that it was because of cheap transactions or something like that. Those people have left, and good for them. They're trying out their experiment. It's not working out great for them, but they're trying it out. Moneroans believe that privacy is valuable. That's why you would own Monero. Even IEO buyers, right? Initial exchange offerings. If you believe that Bitfinex is going to make a lot of money over the long run, at least that's the thesis by which you buy their token. Ethereum people, though, that's the more confusing one, because their narrative continues to change. It was supposed to be a world computer. It's supposed to be some sort of proof of stake thing. Then it was an ICO platform. Now it's like some maker die, stable coin, something. It just keeps changing. Now they're saying it's money for a decentralized internet or something, some weird thing like that. But their narrative keeps changing. The only thing that Ethereum people seem to believe is that their coin should go up. That's about it. And they don't believe in anything or what their value proposition is. It's really, we just need to find one thing that's really, really valuable, and our coins will be going up. Sorry to break it to you, but it's very expensive, and there is no there's no Santa Claus coming. Sorry. Most information consumed will not be relevant in 10 years. Most decisions made will not matter in 10 years. Most relationships will be dormant in 10 years. Low time preference behavior means doing stuff that will matter in 10 years. Bitcoin fixes this. So I like the whole Bitcoin fixes this tagline, which, the more I think about it, the more stuff it fixes. But, our tendency is to consume a lot of news, make a lot of decisions, and, think about relationships on a very short-term scale. This is meant to, admonish you to go and think about the next 10 years and think of relationships and information and decisions with that in mind, instead of what's going to make me feel better in the next 10 minutes. Fighting is good for a decentralized system. The continuous culling of the weak continuously makes the system anti-fragile. Fighting is terrible for a centralized system. The rebellion against authority eventually leads to its collapse given enough time. I think that one's fairly self-explanatory, but basically a decentralized system is naturally anti-fragile to any sort of conflict and fighting. Whereas a centralized system, the fighting and conflict tend to undermine it, which is why all of these altcoins and stuff, which are centralized, they, whenever any sort of fighting happens, their price kind of goes down or whatever. Whereas in Bitcoin, any sort of conflict, like SegWit2x or whatever, it actually makes it go up. Anyway, let's see if there are any questions in chat. I don't think I see any. XRP is a piece of crap. So there's so many videos online that you can read. How far do you think we are from a large POS integrating Bitcoin, point of sale, I guess, like the ones Walmart uses, something that integrates the QuickBooks easily for small business like Square? There's no real demand for it. People don't want to spend their Bitcoin. They're using it as a store of value. That's the big thing. And if you if you have that mindset, then you're going to think that you don't really need to be spending it. You start spending it when you're all in, and that might at some point be enough of the population where that makes sense. But until you're all in, you're gonna spend your fiat money or credit cards or whatever much more faster than the other stuff. So, I mean, I think it'll happen, and I think Safeteen's argument that a lot of these payment processors, like Visa, Mastercard, and so on, that are using a lot of this as a way to move dollars around. They can just sort of like change the underlying thing and move bitcoins around instead. So it might happen regardless, and you get loans in all of these, and you can just basically run the current system on Bitcoin instead of the dollar without too much change. All right. Let's see. Anything else? I think that's about it. Let me just remind you again of the scholarship that's available for programming Bitcoin in San Francisco. Also, if you are inclined to just pay for it, it's San Francisco, November 5th and 6th. My two books are on Amazon. The Little Bitcoin book, which has 31 ratings, almost all 5 stars, 88. I think you could get it on Barnes and Noble and use a coupon and get it for 25% cheaper, but that's on paperback. I think Kindle is like $3.88, but if you already bought buy the paperback, you can get it for 99 cents, something like that. There's also Programming Bitcoin, which is available on Amazon. And this is to learn Bitcoin from scratch. That is about it. I have more videos and stuff that I'm gonna try to do this week. Hopefully this was more interesting. I first time actually like going through my tweets. And it ends up being like a 40-minute show. I had no idea that would happen. Anyway, hope that helps you. Let me go back to the main screen. Hope that helps you. This song is done.